Hey everybody, thanks for watching the first video on the simple knot tying technique. That's something that I would like to go over at our next club meeting, along with handing out those codes for the St. Croix discount. So again, thanks a lot to St. Croix for helping out our program, helping out our club. It is a really generous offer from their part, and I know you guys aren't going to be disappointed with any of their gear. So huge shout out to St. Croix for offering that discount to everybody who's in the club. Something that I've been thinking about what else I wanted to post on our page for us and our YouTube page was something that I tend to think about in early January or in January in general, and that's what am I going to throw during the early spring. So I know we're in the last week of January, but before you know it, it's gonna be March 1st. And some of these ponds and lakes, rivers are probably going to be opened up at that point, but some of the ponds and lakes are going to be opened up, and you're gonna get out there and you're going to want to know what to throw. So every body of water is different. Some things work in different bodies of waters that that others don't, but I'm just going to show you some stuff that's worked for me over the past couple of years, and it's really upped the amount of fish that I've been catching. So they're pretty simple baits, and that's one of the best parts about them is that you don't have to be really great in working them in order to get bites. So first, something that I always throw that's really kind of like my old reliable is just a white spinnerbait. You can throw it on quite a few bodies of water, anywhere where there's grass, anywhere where there's sunken timber, or you have any sort of a brush pile. If you throw this near it, there's a decent chance you're going to get a bite. But when all else fails, I'm probably almost throwing this on first and foremost, but when all else fails, especially on lakes and ponds, I'm throwing something like this, just a simple white spinnerbait, 3/8 ounce spinnerbait. I don't like to throw them too big because I tend to get fewer bites. If you throw a bigger bait, it tends to trigger larger fish. But if I'm just looking for bites, I'm just looking for my standard spinnerbait with, you have a willow blade right here, just kind of looks like a willow leaf. And then this type of blade here is what's called a Colorado blade. This blade here is going to probably produce more of an effect of vibration, especially it's going to make a difference in muddier water or stained water. But this is something that is probably going to get you guys bites almost anywhere that you go. If the water's darker, or not darker, but if the water's a little bit more stained or muddy, tend to throw a little bit more of a chartreuse colored bait. Sometimes I'll just have the entire skirt that's chartreuse, but this is a 3/16 ounce spinnerbait. It's a little bit smaller, but I do tend to get more bites on smaller baits. Pretty much all the time on spinnerbaits, I always throw a little trailer on there, so we can go over that at one of our meetings on how to rig that too. Something similar to a spinnerbait that I know a lot of people throw and a lot of people have great luck on. Some of the largest bass that I've caught have come off of this lure here, and this is a 3/8 ounce chatterbait. Very similar to a spinnerbait. It doesn't have those blades that come off the side, but it has this vibrating blade that you're gonna really feel when you're reeling it in. You can work it many different ways. I tend to just work it kind of like a spinnerbait, but this is a dynamite lure. It's made by Z-Man. Different category that has the same idea behind it as a spinnerbait that I also throw in the early spring is a swim bait. So a swim bait essentially is you're just throwing something out there that's going to look like a minnow. You're wanting to mimic, the natural forage, natural food of a bass, but something that has really worked for me. If a spinnerbait's not working, and maybe you're in a body of water that's a little bit clearer, where the fish aren't necessarily looking for that vibration or waiting for that vibration that comes from this blade, is a swim bait. I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but it is just a minnow. Essentially, it's just a minnow bait that you're going to reel in slowly. Throw it over grass. Again, throw it over logs, throw it over brush piles or along the side of brush piles, so you don't, you can get snagged pretty easily on these. But these have been awesome, especially when nothing else works. This one is probably the one that has worked the best for me over the last couple years. It is made by Z-Man. It's called a gobius. This fish is actually an invasive species of the Great Lakes, but smallmouth in the Great Lakes, in Wisconsin specifically, fatten up on these throughout the spring, pretty much all year round. But this is something that has really, really worked for me on ponds over the last few years. I've probably caught 75% of my fish on ponds over the last few years, specifically on this bait. So it's just a cast and retrieve bait. You can work it a bunch of different ways. If you want to pop it off the bottom, you can. If you want to throw it over grass, you can do that as well. But this has been outstanding over the last few years. So if you need me to tell you where to get it, just see me at the next meeting or type it in the comments. But it is awesome. Another one that is a little bit easier to snag, but it does trigger bites, is a lipless crankbait. So unlike our chatterbait or the spinnerbait, you got treble hooks, so this can get a little bit easier to snag. Well, actually not a little bit, a lot easier to snag, but it will trigger reactions, especially in I would say for me, murkier or stained or muddy water. In those types of water conditions, you're trying to get reaction bites in many cases because the fish can't see very far. They're just trying to feel any sort of bait fish around them or any sort of forage. And if you listen, it's got a rattle in there. So this is something that you might want to tie on if you have darker water and you're gonna have a small chance of getting snagged, but these have been pretty solid for me as well. If the water is really muddy, you can go with something that's got a little bit more flash to it, something a little bit brighter. So this is a clown pattern with the bright red face, the bright red head of this rattle trap, and then you got a chartreuse back. So this color's been pretty good for me. Typically, the natural color is a little bit better, but if you need to be making a lot of noise and making a lot of commotion for those fish to notice this bait, something bright like that is going to work a little bit better. What else? So if you want to get really technical, and I know this is a go-to bait for a lot of really, really great fishermen, this is a suspending jerk bait. So it has weights inside of it that when you move your rod tip, in a not a very jerky motion. You don't have to move it very much, but it's going to make an erratic motion like this, and it also has rattles in it. When you use this, it's not a steady retrieve. I've had bites off of it. I've caught some nice fish off of just a steady retrieve, but typically you're wanting to twitch your rod tip a few times, let it pause for a second or two, and do it again. We can go over how to do that in our meetings because I can't really demonstrate it right here, but this can really be something that's effective when the water is in the low 40s, low 40 degree temperature range. And something that I tend to throw just as much as spinnerbaits or my swim baits is just a very simple soft plastic. Now, this has probably been my #1 soft plastic over the last couple of years. It is a Z-Man TRD. It is not a very large bait, and quite frankly, when you look at it, it almost looks like why would a bass bite this, or why would any species of fish bite this? But you'd be surprised on just how many fish you catch on this bait. Really, you can fish this all year. You can fish this in the early spring, through the summer, through the fall. It's really, really good. Z-Man makes awesome products that I would say in the fall and in the spring, I'm probably using 75 to about 75% of the time. So this is almost another go-to besides that besides that spinner bait, but it is awesome. And if you guys have any questions on any of these early spring baits, please see me, or if you want to type in the comments or type in on our club page. But yeah, get out and maybe try and find these in stores if you're really interested in catching a lot more fish this spring. Thanks for watching, guys.